So, hello. And today I'd like to talk about a really important subject, and that's not only the hidden heart disease paradox in the healthy appearing South Asian, but it's even regarding that elite athlete who's checking off all the boxes, has it right, but still needs a coronary artery bypass. So we're going to dive into some simple Ayurvedic answers. So the first talk is going to be the science part of it, and then the second half is on what the Ayurvedic understanding of what's going on, and how to go beyond the very important things we should still do, like improve our cholesterol, or sugars, or waistlines, or blood pressure, exercise, sleep, mindfulness. How to go beyond that through an Ayurvedic lens. So my name is Uma Purighalla. I'm a board certified internist in internal medicine. Been practicing for 25 years. And Ayurveda has personally transformed my health. It's touched my life. And so profoundly so that I became an Ayurvedic health counselor and soon to be an Ayurvedic practitioner. I'm a certified yoga teacher, and this is my website, purigallawellness.com. I'd like to start off with just a Mangala Charanam, the beginning of Ashtanga Hridayam, which is a text, an ancient text of Ayurveda written by Sri Vagbata. Ragadirogan Satutanushaktan Asheshakaya Prasatana Sheshan Autsukya Boharati Dajagana Yo Purva Vaidyaya Namostu Tasmai. The inner healing is that wisdom deep within us, all of us. So this is a webinar, and it's not intended to give you professional medical advice, diagnosis, treatment, or Ayurvedic advice, which is Ayurveda is a wellness practice from India, an ancient one. It's alternative medicine. It's not for assessment or management. So always seek the advice of your healthcare provider for medical concerns. So what happened? This fine doctor was doing all things right, it seems, checking off all the boxes, vegan diet, exercises, normal weight, lipid profile, didn't smoke. His mild hypertension was well controlled, but he needed a quadruple bypass. Let's go on to, first of all, second of all, the South Asian risks. It is known that South Asians are 2.5 times have 2.5 times the risk of heart disease than Caucasians, and it starts 10 years earlier on average. It's more severe cases, higher rates of death. Lipoprotein little a is associated with it, insulin resistance, more belly fat, like the apple-shaped people, higher rates of diabetes, high blood pressure. And, the lifestyle, it's associated with less exercise, very sedentary diets that are high in refined carbohydrates and fats. So that's common knowledge. And yes, these activities are risks, right? Fried food, salty food, smoking, stress, too much fats and oils, high sugar, diet heavy in refined carbs, as we talked about, poor in plant-based whole foods, poor sleep, sedentary. So is there a missing limb that Ayurveda might help us with regarding cardiovascular health in the South Asian populations and those healthy athletes who happen to get heart disease? I was looking for an image of limbs on an animal, like a one-legged bull, and I came across this Roman sculpture that was found in 1956, very ancient sculpture. And it's in France. It's a one-legged bull. And interestingly, in ancient Vedic Indian writings, there's a one-legged bull and it's standing on one leg of truth. It's a deep symbology. I thought that was an interesting connection. Okay, let's talk about the limbs, the metabolic limbs that are a risk for, this group of people, South Asians. Elevated lipoprotein little a, that's not good. High triglycerides, low cholesterol, insulin resistance. And the bottom limb, we often overlook, but B12 deficiency, omega-3 fatty acid deficiency, vitamin D raise risks of heart disease and also raise the risks of the above metabolic disorders. For example, vitamin D deficiency is causally related to these metabolic disorders, not just associative. So I just want us to expand upon this, this limb of nutrient deficiencies that are common in South Asians. And 40% of us are vegetarian. And so South Asians, it's an epidemic. Here are more statistics of how much the populations are deficient. And this isn't just populations who may not have access to food. No, these are people who have thriving lives and can eat well. There's a hypothesis, the thrifty gene hypothesis regarding South Asians, that, under colonial rule, there was a lot of famine, and we had to evolutionary develop super efficient metabolisms, like super efficient batteries to store energy. And now, in times of plenty, they're overcharged more than other populations. So what nutrients have B12, vitamin D, and omega-3? So B12 is an excretion of bacteria, and it's largely found in animal products. Vitamin D, the sunshine vitamin, is easier to get from certain animal products than plants. I think irradiated mushrooms have vitamin D, but a lot of South Asian vegetarians do not eat mushrooms. Omega-3 fatty acid, it's found in fish and also flax seeds, chia seeds, walnuts. Actually, flax seeds are the king of omega-3, but it's easier to absorb and create DHA and EPA, these more complex omega-3s from animal-based foods. So this is the paradox that I found for me. These animal-based foods, including, dairy products like ghee and curd, which some people are very allergic to, these animal-based foods have saturated fats. And when South Asian communities, 40% who are already vegetarian, are already low in B12, vitamin D, and omega-3, if we further cut these out, right, sometimes the recommendations are replace saturated fats with polyunsaturated fats. And some people will take that as meaning cut it out completely. If we do this, we are lowering our ability to get these cardioprotective nutrients. I'm vegetarian. What can I do? Another concern is that studies on statins and cholesterol and heart disease and coronary plaques are largely based on coronary artery disease of the West, different milieu of problems. Lipoprotein little a, again, it's more common amongst South Asians. And statins are known to actually raise this further a little bit. Statins are known as good tools regarding heart disease based on the individual situation, but they are just one facet. Which way looks better when you report some data, relative risk or absolute? If I had a product and the difference in the improvement of that issue, if it was 2 out of 1,000 versus 1 out of 1,000, that's a 0.5% absolute risk reduction. But it doesn't look as good as when you report it as relative risk, right? The difference between the top number 2 and 1 is 50%. And you could say, oh, it's a 50% reduction. So this is an interesting article on statins in persons at low risk of heart disease. The kind who may have high cholesterol, but really nothing else. And you can see how this plays out. They say there's a 30 to 40% risk reduction in non-fatal heart attacks. But when you look at the deeper data, it's only 0.46% with regards to absolute risk reduction. And you would have to treat 313 people for 5 years, for example, to get a reduction in stroke. But they also had numbers for heart attack. But you have to treat 204 people in 5 years, and one of them will get diabetes. So it's a little more complex. Certainly, I give statins secondary prevention. I mean, yes, it would be wise to take it in that circumstance. If one is low in vitamin D, B12, and omega-3, and or omega-3, will correcting the problem reverse heart disease? It's a good question to ask, right? Well, I was shocked when I tried to search for that information. There are actually no well-published studies to answer this specific question. So it's a matter of absence of evidence and not evidence of absence. So let me explain. For example, like the large B12, the studies on B12 level and homocysteine to reduce coronary artery disease, they're done on mostly the general population, people with normal levels. So if I wanted to study if people with deficiencies reduce their risks of heart disease, wouldn't I want to study people who have deficiencies, not normal people? It's as if I wanted to study, does watering dehydrated plants help them? Why would I take well-hydrated plants to find the answer? Seventh-day Adventists are people who are one of the like blue zone populations. They are a group of health and longevity. They have a medical school in Loma Linda, California, and they have well-published peer-reviewed data. They're a group that has low heart disease, and many of them are vegan and vegetarian. And the vegan and vegetarian groups did the best. But their organization, when they study these people, they make sure they're fortifying with B12, vitamin D, and omega-3. These tests, vitamin D, B12, homocysteine, omega-3, they're not routine tests ordered under a wellness checkup. They're not covered as a routine test under most insurance companies. And yes, too much saturated fat is bad. Too much cholesterol is bad. It's not good for coronary artery disease. But what other fats or oils? So seed oils and other processed oils get easily oxidized, and that's not good for heart disease or many other things. And these modern plant-based oils, they sit on the shelves in clear plastic bottles for a long time to get oxidized. They're highly processed. They may look clean and smell good, but they're really processed. And unfortunately, some of the studies show that avocado oil, olive oil are like highly cut with cheap bean and seed oils. There's no real regulations about that. Sometimes science gets it wrong. We make the wrong conclusions in science. Not too long ago, like up until the late 90s, the American Heart Association, the USDA, were erroneously promoting margarine over butter for heart health, based on data, I'm assuming. So this is the dilemma. Vegetable oils have double bonds, making them chemically unstable, prone to oxidation. You produce toxic aldehydes, inflammation, cellular damage. If they're not naturally cold pressed and if they're not fresh, that's a problem. Saturated fats have no double bonds, so they're chemically more stable, less oxidized, less direct pro-inflammatory effects. I'm not saying that, again, too much saturated fats are good. No. Not knowing who your individual circumstance, I can't tell you what to do. I can only advise my loved ones and friends and people who I know to talk to their doctor, making sure they're getting enough B12. This is what I say, B12, vitamin D, omega-3 in your diet, and how this can be verified if you are absorbing enough in your gut. Some people, when they take oral B12, it doesn't get absorbed in their gut. They have to take injections. And it's important not to take too much of these vitamins or too little. It's about balance. And I advise them, ask your doctor what fermented foods and what fiber foods can help the gut microbiome so that digestion and nutrient absorption can be optimal. And yes, of course, this last limb is important. You can't just do one thing, right? You can't just make sure your vitamins are okay. Healthy plant-centered diets, non-processed, good sleep, right amount of exercise, stress management, not frying your food, not frying your food, optimal weight, blood pressure, not smoking are really, really important limbs for health. Now onto the Ayurvedic journey. Ayurveda in a nutshell, first of all. So there's this belief that there's this one consciousness, and from it, it projects a virtual reality, Maya. And from that, you have the five components of our universe: space, air, fire, water, earth, Space, air, fire, water, and earth. And they combine to form these energetic vulnerabilities called Vata, Pitta, Kapha. And Vata is the air space quality, Pitta is the fire water quality, and Kapha is the water earth quality. They have very different characteristics, and we all have Vata, Pitta, Kapha, but to different degrees, which makes our needs unique. Melissa McCarthy, beautiful. Melissa McCarthy, she's kapha prone, more kapha prone. The beautiful Serena Williams is more pitta prone. And the beautiful Taylor Swift, she's more vata prone. They all have each dosha, but their needs are going to be unique. And you have to be the best version of yourself. This discus thrower, no matter how hard he tries, he can't develop those long, slender, thin-boned physique of the runners. So in Ayurveda, it's not about what you eat. It's about, what you eat, what you're able to digest and absorb, which matters in your health. So this is very simply, you eat the food and it gets digested, and then it nourishes your rasa, which is the fluid component of your blood, then the rakta, which is the cellular component, then the mamsa, which is muscle, and then it goes into deeper layers to nourish the meda, the fat, then deeper, the ashti, the bone, maja, the bone marrow, and stem cells, and the nervous system, and then sukra and artava, the reproductive system, and then these subtle essences, prana, life force, tejas, radiant energy, and ojas, vital energy. So if one of these tubes is clogged, then you'll get a backflow, which matters when we talk about the current problem we're having with the South Asian heart disease issues and the elite athletes. So let's imagine, just like making a pancake or a dosa, your stomach has to cook and absorb food. So let's say we didn't season the pan and the fire is too weak. Then the batter is going to get caked on, baked on. And let's say we never clean the pan, right? In nighttime when we don't eat, it's like a cleaning process for a gut. Then we have all this greasy grime and we can't absorb food. Things get blocked. So in Ayurveda, for most circumstances, we have to gently do Deepanapachana, a cleaning, either with certain practices or herbs, maybe, depending on the person, or Deepana, which is to increase the Agni, the flame, the fire, the gastric, and then Pachana, which is the cleaning part, and then seasoning the pan, right? So you have optimal digestion, cooking. And then when you have that balance, you can balance these qualities that we all need, right? There's snigdha, we need oily and moist, but not too much. And there's ruksha, we do need some dryness. And all these opposites, they have to balance each other. And everyone has different things that are imbalanced. So definitely, in Ayurveda, there's no one size fits all. It's really important to know the person's prakriti, what their natural body type is. Are you kind of more like Venus Williams, Taylor Swift, or Melissa McCarthy? And then your Vikriti, what's getting imbalanced further over time as you age or with the seasons, etc.? What's the Agni? What's the digestive capability? And then Ama, when you don't digest food properly, then that food kind of ferments or it gets misdigested and forms ama, the sticky goo that blocks certain weak channels in your body, certain vulnerable channels. So let's take a deeper look at this in real life situations. So I'll explain what vata, the airspace quality, further what vata aggravation is. But notice this Sri Ramanujan Iyengar. He is a world famous mathematician, Orthodox vegetarian, skinny arms, skinny legs. Travels from South India to England. I think he went to Cambridge and again, world renowned. Studied there and gets TB. At age 32, he dies. He probably got TB in India. Was he vitamin D deficient when he went to England because he has dark skin? Did his vitamin B12 plummet because he just doesn't have the same vegetarian options in England, and he's stuck with his vegetarian diet? So did his immune system weaken and allow latent, dormant TB that he was happily living with in India, and now it became active? I see this in South Asians who newly come to the USA, a place of low TB, and suddenly they have an unusual manifestation. Something changed in their environment or their diet. You can see one size doesn't fit all according to Ayurveda. Just look at these populations. They all have different diets, right? The Japanese, Icelandic, Amish people, very good longevity. And Mediterraneans a few generations ago, very good longevity. I mean, they weren't just eating plant-based. They had organ meat and they had fish. Seventh-day Adventists, very good longevity, but many of them are vegetarian and vegan. But they're supplementing, they're fortifying their foods, making sure B12, vitamin D, and omega-3 are are in their diet somehow. And then there's the French paradox, lucky them, and unfortunately Indian paradox, where we have these metabolic issues. So were our ancient Ayurvedic ways wrong for us? No. No, you can see that Sri Krishnamacharya, a great Ayurveda doctor, a great Vaidya and yogi, he lived to 100. And his student, B.K. Iyengar, 95. And then his student, Srimati Portion Lynch, 101. They weren't eating late. They weren't eating fried food. They were doing a lot of mindfulness practices. And I thought this was an interesting quote. Whenever flax seeds become a regular food, it's among the people, there will be better health. That's Mahatma Gandhi. And flax seeds, again, is the king of omega-3 fatty acid. You don't want to get too much. You don't want to get too little. These yogis ate fermented foods, like truly fermented foods, not the stuff that sits on the shelf, super processed yogurts. They drank well water. They probably boiled it so they don't get cholera. And they had a diverse gut microbiome that could absorb nutrients. Why are endurance athletes at risk for vitamin D deficiency and heart disease? Again, Ayurveda might say vata aggravation, right? It is vitamin D is low in them in spite of them running in the sun, and that causes inflammation. And how does this vata aggravation biochemically seem to manifest? Well, when you're a runner, you need more cortisol. To make cortisol, you need to make it from cholesterol, right? You have to make many hormones from cholesterol. Then cholesterol gets depleted, so you can't really synthesize vitamin D. Vitamin D goes down and you get inflammation and then risk for heart attack. So Bill Clinton's coronary artery disease was different. He had a kapha vriddhi. So, Melissa McCarthy's more kapha prone. It's that earth water. So you can see that he was attracted to like Big Macs, steaks, cheeseburgers, milkshakes, those types of things. And so his was not an issue of nutrient deficiency as much as it was some vata vriddhi, lots of saturated fats, for example. He did better on a whole food, near vegan diet. He ate some fish, right? It worked for him. The plaque of vata vitiation is kind of like the Indian coronary artery disease. You can see it's thin. It's like probably like sclerotic, inflamed, unstable, versus which is a vata vriddhi, right? Airspace versus kapha vriddhi. Bill Clinton's coronary, I'm assuming, is like the thick fibrous plaque. A lot of calcification. So their coronary calcium scores are going to be higher than the South Asians. So statements like this risk certain vulnerable people getting vata aggravation, right? This is a statement that makes me a little sad. The lower your LDL cholesterol, the better. We now know you can't be too rich, too thin, or have too low an LDL cholesterol. And another quote: throughout the range of LDL-C levels, lower is better, with no lower threshold. There are no known adverse effects of very low LDL-C concentration. But how long are these people testing? Are they, testing 10 years or 2 years? I think that this is a very one-size-fits-all statement. So primary prevention, statins in the drinking water, again, that will produce vata aggravation for some of us, right? Yes, too much cholesterol is bad, but we need some cholesterol to build cell walls, to make vitamin D, create hormones like estrogen, testosterone, cortisol. aids in digesting fat. It's really important to have the balance. So the South Asian apple-shaped propensity, the coronary artery disease that develops is a different beast, right? So sampradipti means pathophysiology in Ayurveda. So you have this vata, airspace, prakopa. I'm going to skip this one and just the more simple version. So the pathophysiology, you have when wind, vata, goes wild, digestion gets weak, right? If you have a flame and you put too much wind, it goes out and you can't digest food. And so you get this probably fermented toxic goo called ima, and the pipes shrivel up. And then there's this kapha, toxic, irregular fatty buildup, and the fat gets dirty in the fatty tissue. And so that's kind of more in the omentum, like where the belly is, the organ, the visceral fat. And when you clog that area, then the deeper tissues, remember we talked about from fat, then you have to nourish the bone, and then the bone marrow and the nerves and so on. All those tissues get blocked and depleted. And so this is really a disorder of inflammation and actually nutritional depletion. So in other words, the sticky stuff is blocking the free movement of vata inside the body's tiny roads to go to the bone marrow, nerve, and reproductive tract. And in the Western phenomenon, I'm assuming in Bill Clinton's case, he had, I'm going to stick with the easier version, Western predominant. He had too much kapha and weak digestion, right? If you put too much saturated fat, if I put too much ghee on a lamp, it's going to go out. Then you get the sticky ama that forms, the sticky goo. And in this person, the kapha spreads everywhere evenly. But then it finally clogs a heart channel. And that's what happens to this person. And you can see how it plays out. We'll skip over to the differences. And it's true, like a person, if both people are overweight, but one is vata aggravated, like an apple shaped versus a pitta aggravated pear shaped, you can see the apple shaped has higher heart disease, more deadly, higher risk of diabetes, autoimmune diseases, because you're affecting the bone marrow, the immune system, cancers are higher, and osteoporosis higher. We always told that thin people have, God bless you, thin people have osteoporosis, but overweight people, but that's the exception is in the pear-shaped vata aggravated person who's actually deeply internally nutritionally depleted in deeper tissues. And so the gut microbiome, it's so important for absorbing many nutrients and for brain health and immunity, so many things. And all over the world, there was fermented food, and it was made homemade, and it was teeming with really good bacteria. And learning to make fermented food is not at all difficult. But the store-bought ones are, whenever I buy store-bought yogurt, I can never use it as a starter culture. It seems like it's sterile in my view. There's a couple brands I would say you can do it. But according to Ayurveda, the stomach digestion, Agni, if it's poor, then or the causes of poor Agni can be from a depleted krimi. Like krimi are organisms that you can't really see. Sometimes they're parasites, but there's a recognition that some krimi are good. This sounds like the microbiome. This was talked about in ancient times. And so if you don't have good krimi, you won't have good Jataragni either. And so that's because you have a low fiber diet, processed foods that are tamasic or dull or if you take acid blockers, you risk nutritional depletion, as it says on the package insert. And yes, these medicines are important. They should be used, but in the right way if they're needed. So let's talk about ghee. Ghee is a saturated fat, but according to Ayurveda, if it's used for the right person at the right dose, it's incredibly helpful in improving your digestive fire. So it balances vata, it cools pitta, or so it soothes vata, it cools pitta, and it in small doses it supports digestion for kapha as well. And scientifically, ghee has butyric acid, which is good to feed the happy microorganisms. And it's a tradition that after a meal you took a little a tiny bit of buttermilk or something like that, right? So that the your meal that's digesting in your stomach, you're putting all these microbes on there so they can have a nice party. So again, I don't know your individual circumstance, but these are the things that I have advised my loved ones and friends who I know. And just talk to you. I tell them, talk to your doctor about making sure you know how you're getting these vitamins, these nutrients, um, optimally balanced in your body, that your GI tract is absorbing them. What fermented foods are really fermented and good for you, and certain fiber foods. Talk to your doctor about that. I tell them. And yes, it is very important. You can't just do one limb, like take a bunch of vitamins to be healthy. No, you have to, it's like the bull has to stand on four legs, right? All four legs. So that's healthy diet, proper sleep, right amount of exercise, stress management, optimal weight, blood pressure, tobacco cessation are very important limbs. It's like tending to a garden, the enthusiastically, patiently, lovingly tending to the garden. The garden needs not only good water, it needs the right temperature. It not only needs that, it needs the right sunshine and the right soil. So I have personally found that, you know, Ayurveda are these ancient algorithms. I'm not talking about, just randomly buying herbs and you don't know what the quality is. And, no, I'm talking about like these ancient algorithms. I can see how they are meant to adapt to the ever-changing world. So even though those are not changing, they somehow can adapt to what is needed in our point in space and time. So I thank you for your time, and I wish you all the best.